guys, welcome back to the rollout. I'm Linsay Rousseau.
And I'm Genevieve Marie. Hello and welcome.
Okay, so we have some really fun things to talk about today because I don't know about you, Jen. I've been waiting for this show since it was announced. And since it was announced that Peggy Carter would be making a reappearance in the MCU, and we finally have Marvel's What If.
I know. I have to admit that this show snuck up on me.
Well, it was announced a while ago, and then it's like, oh, and it's out. Yeah.
Right. Well, I was driving to work one day, and in LA, we have all these billboards and stuff advertising for movies and TV shows. And one day I was just driving down the street and I see a giant Marvel, what if? And I'm like, what are they talking about?
Show.
I was like, what are they talking about? And then I'm like, oh, it's a show. Because I asked somebody and they're like, you don't know about this? Right. But anyway, it definitely snuck up on me. And then of course I did watch it the days that it came out. And I was very excited to see where they were going with it. Yeah. And, just to check it out.
Right. And obviously, as we're recording, only 2 episodes are out now. So I'm sure we will be back to talk about the future episodes as they come out. But we were just so excited about the first 2 that we felt like we might as well just dive in.
Right. Exactly. Staying topical. My cat Wolfgang's right here.
Yes.
Wolfgang is left of Asgard.
Oh, okay. Yes.
But yeah, so let's just break it down.
Yeah, so episode 1. Yeah, episode 1 gave us Captain Carter, which if anyone knows me, they know I'm like the biggest Peggy Carter fan, and I still feel betrayed that, Agent Carter was canceled. Still bitter about that. But this finally brought her back, and I thought it was epic how they did it. And I swear, Marvel, you now have timey-wimey going on. Can we please have Agent Carter back in the MCU on the big screen? Just putting that out there in the universe.
Well, there's something very interesting about these what if episodes where they are actually just contained in a single sort of they're not a part of the MCU timeline. They're saying it's gonna impact in Doctor Strange, that because of what happened in Loki, that set up the events that allow the what if timelines to exist. So yeah, so it's alternate realities, but still technically canon. Right. Well, it just leaves them a lot of places to do some experimentation, try some things, maybe try and I call them fix-its, where you kind of retcon a lot of things that you later might have seen as maybe problematic, or a direction that you'd rather wish that you had gone down. The Peggy Carter episode to me was especially interesting because it gave a different dynamic to Peggy and Steve's relationship. Yeah. It showed you, which I think was interesting, that yes, they still have a romantic relationship, that, it isn't just about looks and him turning into this sort of Chad alpha male, and that's where the attraction starts, sort of thing. So it's kind of nice to have that because it showed their relationship predated him, in our MCU reality, him being Cap, still scrawny Steve Rogers. Right. And I think that, that's some good messaging as well, because you have all these Marvel movies coming out, and you have all these men and women in peak physical form. Right. And you don't really get that much representation. Even with Spider-Man, I would say that kid is enviable to other kids his age, I would think. And I just really liked that they, went in a direction that was different from that actually enhanced the story for me personally. because it does prove that, you know, their relationship wasn't just about looks, that it can, you know, withstand, you know, a lot of things. And it gave them kind of a moment of emotional growth as well.
Well, and it showed them bonding because they were both outsiders. You know, he was, you know, the person who wasn't fit for duty, even though he wanted to serve. And she was the one who wasn't fit for duty because she was a woman. And they both ended up, you know, bonding through that and then going on to prove everybody wrong, obviously.
Right. And it's interesting because in the first movie, you still have Peggy being in that space of, you know, not quite belonging, but then Steve Rogers, he starts off scrawny, but then he eventually comes to fit the mold of what is expected of him, even though he has to kind of fight for it and, you know, fight to be taken seriously. He's still, at the end of the day, is somebody that is traditionally, you know, visually seen as, you know, somebody who would fit that role.
Right.
And I have to give them props. Like they did beef up, you know, Peggy, and, you know.
Yeah, they did. And the joke about, well, you're not gonna have to wear heels anymore. I was like, well, okay.
They
Haley Atwell is a pretty fit person to begin with, so, you know, to take her and make her even bulkier was I was glad that they did that, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, because it only makes sense because, you know, Steve Rogers bulked up visually, and so they didn't go the coward's route and just have her continue to have like her hourglass, like typical small, you know, 125-pound, you know, female body. That she actually visually changed as well. I liked that.
Yeah, they gave us a strong character. They put her in a practical outfit, you know, and they, you know, she throws down punches and kicks. I mean, she's not, you know, standing on the back shooting people. She is up there beating the shit out of people.
Right. I have to say the action was, I really did enjoy the action scenes in this, whereas, and maybe it's because it was in such a short form content that things had to be like if you were doing an action scene, it had to be essential to the story. There was no excess where you just like get lost in it. And it's not like it's not a Man of Steel where the last third of the movie is just like people punching each other and throwing each other into buildings. So I liked that, but I did kind of have a problem with the short form content, but that is purely because they're rehashing a story that we already know, but they're having to cut huge chunks out of it. So some of these do feel a bit rushed.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're obviously expecting the audience to know the original story and then trying to overlay this over it. So it's like, okay, the audience will hopefully fill in those gaps that are there.
Yeah.
But I do get what you're saying. Cause it's a 30-minute, they're each 30-minute episodes, you know?
Yeah. It definitely is kind of like, if you're not part of the club, you're not going to.
Yeah, I mean, you can still appreciate it, but it's definitely, yeah.
Right. And like, I will be honest, it had been a very long time since I've seen Captain America, you know, the first Avenger. Like it had been a real long time since I'd seen that movie. So like, there were things that I'm like, does that happen in the movie? Like, what else? You know, I'm trying to like play catch up kind of with my mind, and like,
because that was 10 years ago now, almost.
Yeah. It was a long time ago. So that was kind of one of the things that like I wanted to make note, that the pacing is very fast, and then sometimes, for me anyways, felt a bit too fast. Like they skipped over a lot of events and a lot of things, but you're going to have that if you're going to
you're going to have to know you're going to have to know who the characters are, because they don't introduce any of the characters. So I mean, you can enjoy it on its own, but if you really do want to understand the story, you really need to have seen First Avenger, because all of the ancillary characters, like I was trying to be like, wait, what was his name again? I mean, obviously I recognized who they were, but you know, it's you're definitely, it helps if you have that, you know, I don't know, Google it before you watch or something just to be familiar with who's who. But, you know, in general, if the, you know, obviously the intention was to overlay this over an existing story that people are familiar with, then yeah, I thought they did a really good job with the storytelling that they did. Yeah. And I really appreciated them finally giving Peggy Carter her dues and letting her fully, you know, fully showing what she could have become, you know, had things been a little bit different.
Yeah, I also want to point out that I've seen a lot of people talking about how the dialogue felt, you know, either forced or like the writing was not that good, and there are a lot of one-liners that are thrown in there.
Right.
To me personally, and I don't know if this is on purpose, it felt very Saturday morning cartoon. I don't
know if I'd go that far, but I do like get what you're saying. Like
built,
it tried to be, yeah, like it was trying to be a dramatic animated series. But then I think they had I think that they were dealing with, well, the writers were like, oh, we're writing for a 30-minute cartoon. Whereas I think if they just stayed in the mindset of this being a more adult animated series, but I think they were trying to maybe pull in the kid factor. And so they were throwing that in.
Right. I mean, the flavor is definitely more upbeat, I would say.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Like there is a lot of things that don't hold as much emotional, or you know, it just doesn't hold as much weight as, you know, some of the events in the actual movies do, because we've heard this story before, so this is just kind of like a fun, you know, frolic through the flowers. It definitely, for me, it just kind of like had that extra like Saturday morning cartoon feeling to it, where you're like, I understand where you're going, but like also the mix, the tone, I get the tone. I understand what they were going for, but I feel like it could be a tad bit confusing to people based on what content they've been given before. Right. You know?
Well, and honestly, it made me want more, because like now that I saw this 30 minutes, I was like, oh, now I want to see this as a feature film, or now I want to see this as a series. Like you just gave me Peggy Carter First Avenger, and now I want to see the story of Peggy Carter First Avenger. And it's like, you teased me, Marvel. You know, you teased me.
It does kind of feel like a pitch, you know?
Which if it's a backdoor pilot, like I'm okay with that if we end up getting a show out of this, but
yeah, a lot of these, they do feel kind of like a pitch almost. I have to say, I think, I mean, obviously they're bringing, you know, the characters back through the original, you know, the original actors who played them.
Most of them. I mean,
most of them.
Yeah, it was not Chris Evans as the voice of Steve Rogers, but yeah, for the most part, it was all the original actors. Yeah. I mean, we even got Josh Brolin, you know, well, in the next episode, but yeah.
Right. Which to me, some people I thought did great. Other people, there was a handful of people that felt wonky.
Right.
And I believe either somebody was just doing a quick recording in their closet over COVID, or
which was the reality that a lot of this was recorded during the pandemic, I mean, I know people who worked on the project, and yes, most of those celebrities did not come into Disney Animation Studios here in Burbank. You know, they were recording from, you know, because obviously this project the development of this project covers years, and some of the actors recorded early on, and some, like Benedict Cumberbatch, wasn't even supposed to be in it, and then they got him right at the end. So yeah, I think there was definitely probably some discontinuity between when things were recorded, where they were recorded, who was directing, you know, all those different elements.
Right. Yeah. And I do feel like it definitely showed not so much in the first episode, but in the second episode, there was quite a few, like, especially the characters who had maybe one or two lines that was just kind of like,
Right. Yeah.
The quality and the direction was a bit questionable, especially from actors that we know are very talented.
Right.
And, you know, and can deliver a good performance. And maybe it's literally just because they're not voice actors. You know what I mean?
Which, you know, that is not uncommon, you know, having,
of course,
you know, living in the world of voiceover, you know, it's a different medium. And especially if we're talking about the pandemic, where it makes a big difference being able to come into a studio and be there with the voice director, you know, as opposed to being patched in from your home, from your closet, and you're just over the, you know,
it's
you're
very
just on headsets with them. It is very different. It's very different.
Yeah. So that was one of the bigger gripes that I had with the series so far.
Yeah.
Is just that, like, unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, you know, a lot of these things were not meshing as good as they probably could have or should have been. But of course, you know, you're going to give, you know, leeway for a lot of things. And again, it's just, it's a 30-minute episode. If you're lying, if you had two lines and they didn't,
and you know what, for what it was, and you know what, I liked the animation style. It's an animation style I haven't seen done often or before. I mean, it had a very comic book graphic novel feel to it with the lighting and how they did that. So I really did appreciate the comic or the animation style that they used for it.
Yeah, lots of fun mocap work done, you know, like lots of, like, the movements were great. I really think that they did a good job with coloring and the, you know, just making it look like its own thing.
Right.
Like, it was very distinct. I didn't feel like it was necessarily copying anything directly. Like, you could see inspirations here and there, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
It really did feel like a comic book come to life.
Yeah, it really did.
I saw some people actually complain about that, which I get it. I get it if you're not a comic book fan. There's a lot of people out there that just watch the Marvel movies and don't read the comic books or don't read any comic books. But at the same time, it just kind of felt a little weird seeing multiple reviews of people just being like, I didn't like it because it felt like a comic, like it looked like where do you, and it's like, it's a
right. Like, do you remember where Marvel came from? Do you know that these characters, some of them have an 80-year history before they graced the big screen, you know?
Right. And I would much rather the art style be more grounded in a comic book, like, you know, for the visuals in a comic book, like, you know, setting and mode, like Into the Spider-Verse. Like, I absolutely talk about something that does comic book art style, but in a film medium very, very well. It's Into the Spider-Verse. I think that they probably took a lot of cues from Into the Spider-Verse and they made their own thing. There's a lot of things, you know, that are not, like, Into the Spider-Verse is actually cut like a comic book, like lots of different like panels and scenes, and especially in the editing where they do freeze frames and things, it just is, it is brilliant the way that they make it just feel like a moving, living comic book.
Exactly.
And I feel like this one does its own thing, but in the same vein. And I appreciated that.
Yeah. And I will also say, and obviously we've only got 2 episodes to look at right now, but they even gave distinctions between the 2 episodes. So it, you know, Captain, the Captain Carter had it had the feel of the 1940s, and then when we had, Star-Lord, it's still, we're like, okay, this is still the same animated series, but they did change it enough to give it its own feel, which I really appreciated that. So I think a lot of, obviously it's Marvel, a lot of thought went into the production design and giving everything their own feel.
Right. I will say that I think Captain Carter suffers from retreading old ground.
Right. Whereas Star-Lord T'Challa was able to be a new,
very
alternate
different
world.
Yeah, very different from the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I mean, you don't even have Gamora or Groot,
which I was very surprised to see who they brought in and who they did not bring in. Like, okay, we got Nebula, but we didn't get Gamora, and we didn't get Groot and Rocket. Like, it was very interesting. And then we had Thanos, and I was like, okay, well, how do we have, I was very confused when we had Nebula and not Gamora, which that surprised me. I won't lie, that surprised me.
Yeah, there was, okay. And it felt wonky. The second episode, to me, like, there was a lot of things that I did like about it.
Yeah.
The backgrounds and the environments that they created were a lot of new things that we haven't seen before, like the club scene, or the bar scene, where it's just like this massive sprawling bar, like that. I loved that. I thought that
that was great. And you could see, and I'm going to have to go back and rewatch so you can pick out everything in the background. And then even the collector's room, it was much more vast.
Right. Well, you got to see a lot more of it. And just kind of the layout and how all these things worked. Like, it was interesting seeing like how the tanks actually like move on their own. Like, they obviously have this sort of like magnetic track, or something that they're on, so that there isn't any like domino effect, like the first Mummy, where you've got the bookcases like dominoing over each other. Like, they actually have this sort of thing that keeps them from like getting damaged. Like, that was interesting. It was nice to see a lot of that. I'm not exactly sure why Benicio del Toro's character had to be extremely ripped.
I was very confused by that, because I was like, I loved Benicio del Toro's character in the movie.
Yes.
Like, I didn't ever envision his character being ripped under the clothing that he was wearing. And I honestly don't think it fits, because in my reality, we will eventually get the movie where we have Benicio del Toro and Jeff Goldblum in the same place, and they're just like mirror images of each other. Like, in no reality do those guys have the time to fucking do Captain Marvel's workout. It's like, or Captain America's workout.
Well,
they're so luxury.
They're so narcissistic that I think they already think they're perfect the way they are.
Right.
So it seems kind of weird that like he would develop this like crazy workout.
And they didn't explain it. Like, there was no. I was like, okay, if they're gonna. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, he's super ripped. That's new and different.
Right.
This must serve a purpose. They must say, and nobody says anything about it. And I was just like, was this just character design? Because it doesn't support the character. I was very confused.
Right. I think where Captain Carter succeeds, where the Star-Lord one fails, is that the Star-Lord one, to me, felt like there was a lot of things that just popped up, and they went without questioning or explaining. And it was just one of those, why is Thanos good now? Oh, just because, like, we're going to just like drop in these these single lines of like, oh, well, T'Challa like explained it to him and it was actually quite easy. Or,
and also,
and then just,
the other thing
that goes up and he's buff for no reason.
The other thing that got me was like, oh, you got the wrong person. We got T'Challa. Oh, well, I guess we're just going to keep him. But I'm like, oh, we're not going to go back and get Peter Quill. Oh, it's not like we don't have a spaceship.
They were just
we can go back and get like, you're okay with just letting your son go? Like that's okay with you? Okay, sure. And then you find him at the end. I was like, okay.
There was a lot of just because happening.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of let's just dispel reality. Well, I mean, we're already dispelling reality, but let's dispel even the interstory reality and just accept it and move on. I mean, again,
I feel like it's
less stories to just watch, but yes, if you want to start breaking them down, there's
to your point, it's less dispelling reality of the MCU timeline and more dispelling the reality, like the audience's reality and the audience's understanding of certain things. And it was, I don't want to go in and say it was lazy writing.
No, because this was in development for years. Didn't have enough time. I think that's
30 minutes. They have 30
minutes. They're like, well, we're gonna let this go and keep this, and you know.
Well, essentially, they have 30 minutes to cram in what is, to me, seems like the plot of an entire, hour and a half to 2 hour film, especially if you're doing a heist film. Like half of a heist film is getting to know all the characters and then them like getting the team together. And then the heist is like the last like third of the film.
Right.
And this was just so mooshed in together.
It was a lot of mooshing. I will have to say, and Genevieve, just because it's us, I'm gonna have to bring it up again. I loved what they did with Peggy Carter. Nebula was great, but we had shit female representation in these episodes. Maybe we're going to get better ones in the future, but I feel like I feel like we're back with our token women. Literally, we had Peggy Carter, who again, love her, was so impressed, happy that we got this. Nobody else. We had Nebula, and then, the other chick who saves T'Challa at the end. And I'm like, we don't have Gamora. I'm like, we literally, again, are back with the boys club.
Yeah.
Which blew my mind. And I was like, look, I get we're trying to tell alternate timeline. I'm like, okay, maybe I can give it to you in the first Avenger. Like you want it to just be Captain Carter, but with Star-Lord? Really? You gave us 1.5 women?
Yeah, I feel okay. And here's the thing. I cannot fault What If for this.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that they're just working with what the MCU has given them.
Right.
They're not going to spend any precious second that they have in this like 30-minute tiny little bit to introduce any more female characters or any like new female characters, I will say.
Which just says there's not that many to pull from that they could have put in the episode to begin with, because if you get rid of Gamora, you're already getting rid of the only female in the Guardians of the Galaxy, so it's like, okay.
Right. You have Gamora and you have Nebula. And if you get rid of Gamora, you're literally getting rid of half of the females. But
we could have had, I mean, and I get it, we were in space, but could we have had a Shuri cameo? I mean, all of that was the thing that was the most disappointing to me, because one of the things I adored the most about Black Panther were the amazing women in the movie. We had the Dora Milaje, we had his kick-ass sister, we had his amazing mother. And I'm like, so you told T'Challa's story without all of the amazing women that made Black Panther what it was. And obviously he's not Black Panther in this, but like you couldn't have surrounded with him with like, the people he took with him couldn't have been the Dora Milaje. We couldn't have gotten like, I don't know, 4 Dora Milaje up in the air with him in space. That would have been something I'd pay to see.
Yeah, I cannot fault What If. I think the blame obviously falls on the Marvel movies and all the content that has come before, because literally they are just taking what they are given and kind of reworking it into a way that is different and interesting. And if you don't I'm sorry, but if you don't have like peas to add into the cottage pie, you're just not going to have peas in that cottage pie.
Exactly.
You're just not gonna.
Right.
Like, so I get the complaint and I agree. However, I can't go out on a limb and be like, well, it's shame. Shame. Because there is nothing, like, I do feel bad because there is nothing that they could have done.
Right. And except, I don't know. I mean, there's things that could have been done, but yes, I get, when you're pulling from your phase 1 through 3 content, which obviously they started making bigger strides with phase 4 and beyond. Right. You are a bit limited, and
you only have one female-led Marvel film that is gonna, like, no, I mean, before you go into phase 4, like Black Widow, I guess, is the beginning of phase 4.
Black Widow's like the prequel Captain Marvel, I guess. Yeah, is
the afterthought.
Like
Captain Marvel. But yes, so yeah, there was a desperate lack of that. There was a desperate lack of female representation. Gender parity was just not.
It wasn't there at all. It wasn't there at all. I mean, obviously they, my friend Isaac worked on the T'Challa episode, and they did have a predominantly African-American cast for that episode. So props to Marvel for that. Because I know they put a lot of thought into that, which is why I think it hurts a little bit for me to be like, oh, they put all of this thought into making sure they had accurate representation, but not for everyone. So I don't know. It's like you said, Genevieve, it's that hard, sticky thing. It's something we talk about a lot on this show. It's like, they're trying, one step forward. So
you've got to, and I would take that, that comment, that you said about your friend, I would take that as a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would take that as a win, and then just kind of, wait for the next one, because
because we know we're going to be getting Jane Foster. I mean, just for the people that they have announced, like, we know we're going to get a Jane Foster. There's several other characters. We are going to hopefully be getting, Scarlet Witch, and some of the Dora Milaje, I think, are going to be popping up in other episodes. So, Sharon Carter, so we will be getting, but in even just looking, if you Google the list of characters that are in these episodes, the female to male ratio is just abysmal. It's just abysmal.
But again,
we're pulling off what we have, and looking forward to the future. That's why I'm looking forward to the future.
Right. And we had a POC win. So again,
so you know what, Marvel?
We have one, as long as there's one thing that was focused on, because these companies, these studios, they have a lot to deal with. Like, they have to, they have a lot to deal with. They have a lot of people to try and make happy.
Plus investors,
plus they have a lot of people that are not agreeing with us, who they also have to make happy. They've got to find some sort of middle ground to still stay afloat and stay successful. And I feel like, I know that they probably feel that either way they tilt, they're going to get they're going to get flack.
You're not going to
get flack from all sides.
Of course. Yeah, you're never going to please everyone. I'm sure there's so many Sharon Carter haters right now. I'm sure there are many.
I was just going to mention, there were quite a few people that were bringing up I can't believe they're doing this woke stuff with Sharon Carter. And it really wasn't about Sharon Carter, which I thought was interesting. What they really were leaning on, and these were mostly male reviewers, was the Steve Rogers, was the fact that Steve Rogers was not a giant big alpha male, and that somehow it is Marvel trying to emasculate, as if Thor, the actual Captain America, and Iron Man, like, even even
well, all the other guys in the episode. I mean, you still had Bucky, you still had his other crew, you know, not double dogs, but you know, his other crew. I mean, there was plenty of other alpha males in the episode.
Right. As if all of the perfect male bodies that have come before just does not matter. Apparently Steve Rogers still being skinny, but somehow still capable of being a decent human being and
a superhero in his own right. Like, again, you put him in a giant suit, he can do a lot of things.
Well, exactly. Like, he was a superhero in his own right. He was still able to contribute and fight the good fight like he had wanted to. I think there's something even grander, something even better to say about that.
I think that's alone. Yeah, that's a real testament to Steve Rogers' character.
Yes,
that he didn't need the super soldier serum to be a superhero.
Exactly. Like, he was still a good person without it. He was still acting, you know, sorry, Wolfgang is stepping all over the things. He was still acting, you know, a step above, you know, he was still in that Superman sort of like, he's the best of humanity. He is, you know, he is what we strive to be. And I think that is really important in this episode. And they were able to convey that in the tiny bitty 30 minutes that they had to do it.
Yeah.
And he also wasn't the lead character.
Right.
And they still managed to do that. So yeah, going back, we went on a big tangent, but going back, I know the studios, they have a lot of things. They have a lot of boxes they need to check and go through and make sure that they are falling somewhere between pleasing a certain type of audience, like, you know, our type of audience, a different type of audience. Like, they need to be able to find a good middle ground that everybody is going to be somewhat okay with.
Right.
And I have to say that there has been a lot of risks that they have taken.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, particularly Loki, you know, having the audacity to have a female led, you know, TV show being the first one that they release on Disney Plus,
with WandaVision.
Yep. And I really think that they are learning from.
Oh no, I definitely, all the signs that we've seen coming out of Marvel, you know, probably starting with Captain Marvel. I mean, it's shown that they definitely, I think, you know, probably part of it's a testament to Scarlett Johansson probably in the background being like, yo guys, what the fuck? And then also them realizing, hey, fangirls are out here too, and we like to see ourselves on screen, and not just us, I mean in general, you know. So I think we've definitely seen Marvel evolve over the past decade, and if their slate of upcoming shows and movies is any, you know, indication, they are thinking about these things very deeply. And I think obviously there's going to be controversy anywhere, like you said. Like, the big controversy now is with Miss Marvel and the fact that they didn't actually cast, you know, a Muslim woman in that role, that they cast, you know, I think she's a Persian Christian. So like, whatever they do, there's going to be blowback from someone, but at least they're trying, you know. And in an industry like this, where there's 5 million decision makers, and so many people that you have to get approval from, you know, before you can do anything, you know, they are at least trying. So props to Kevin Feige for that. And, you know,
Right. It wasn't Wonder Woman 1984.
No, it wasn't.
Where we're taking steps backwards.
Yeah.
We are.
Well, there was kind of a feeling of nostalgia for these first 2 episodes too. And especially, I mean, I think one, because it obviously takes place in the 40s, so you have nostalgia there. And then obviously 2, because, you know, now we are, you know, this was the late great Chadwick Boseman, you know, there was a tribute to him too. So there definitely was a feeling of throwback to the Marvel of old, for better or for worse, you know?
Yeah. And like again, even if it's a slow march forwards, which it always is, it's never it's never progress by leaps and bounds. It's always
Right.
you're taking slow steps forward. Sometimes there's a couple of steps back, but progress continues to be made. I do have to say that I am tentatively optimistic about the future with Marvel. DC, I don't know. They're a wild card.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about Suicide Squad here probably in our next episode, which, had, again, promising signs, but DC just is all over the place. They're all over the place. I mean, besides their TV shows, I think, are doing things a little bit better, but they're all on the CW. So they all kind of have that campy feel to them, which, if you like that, again, I love Legends of Tomorrow. I think it's the best DC show out there. But they have taken a lot of risks in their TV shows that I haven't seen them take in their movies.
Right. And they're animated movies too.
Oh yeah, they're animated. They're,
Killing Joke aside.
Killing Joke. Yeah, I was going to say Killing Joke. And then, obviously the latest DC Batman that came out. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Killing Joke aside, because that was just terrible. They have come out with, pretty good, animated movies that I have actually enjoyed. Granted, they all come from existing storylines.
Right. They are all literally ripped from plots. Yeah.
I think the only one that I've seen recently that has not come from a pre-existing storyline was the Batman Harley Quinn film, which is actually very endearing. It's very cute. Still not for kids.
Yeah.
But if you want something that's just kind of light and fun to watch, I really enjoyed that one. But DC with their live action films, it's just I cannot point to one and say like this is a true masterpiece, or like even a really good film. I enjoyed Aquaman for what it was, but
I enjoyed Aquaman for Jason Momoa.
I will not stand Aquaman as like a very good film that was pieced together. Like, no, it's not that. You don't watch it because it's a good movie. It's a movie that
you're watching it for Jason Momoa.
That, but like also it kind of took me back to like the Underworld days, like the early 2000s, which
I love. Underworld.
And then I love it. No, but like at the same time watching Underworld today, you're like, you see all these like tropes.
Oh yeah.
And you also see like the action moves and the cinema style for action films back then, that when Underworld was made, it set the precedent for every action film like that came after it that was supposed to be like the gothic, the dark, the gritty, the dark gothic shooting. Mm-hmm. So then you kept seeing the reiteration of like the superhero jumping off the really high building and then landing in like the crouch position, and that now that just seems so like blasé and overdone. Yeah. Aquaman does that exact same thing, but not on purpose. Like it is not self-aware, and I love that about it. I love how it does so many things that movies from the early 2000s did. Mm-hmm. And it was new back then, and we thought it was like super cool and like the most amazing thing. Right. However, they're doing it in a modern action film.
10, 20 years later. Yeah.
And they're dead serious about it. And that is what makes that movie just so fantastic to watch. But yes, you can sit down and throw in pretty much any Marvel movie and be satisfied.
I mean, we can even rank them of like best to worst, and even worst, I feel doesn't even come close to best DC movie. And I'm sure we have people who might disagree with us, but I feel like that's a pretty common sentiment. I think it's safe to say that. As much as Thor 2, I enjoyed Thor 2. Thor 2 seems to be the one, Dark World, that gets the most shit on. Okay. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it at all.
People are out of their minds, or they did not see Iron Man 2. Because if somebody locked me in a room in like a Saw style situation where I had to choose between Batman v Superman and Aquaman 2, and Iron Man 2, it would be a hard. Actually, no, I would always pick Iron Man. Because
I would pick Iron Man, but I get your point. Yeah,
I think it is shorter, and it actually has characters in it.
Right.
It has actual characters in it, and a bird.
There was a bird. Hey, we had a duck. Parrot. We had a duck in What If. I mean, and did Marvel doubled down on their Howard the Duck cameo. Not a cameo. Thanks, Seth. Thanks, Seth Green, for bringing Howard the Duck to life for us.
They are going to go back to that as many times as they feel that they can get away with.
Nope. Well, and an animated setting and an alternate reality, I feel like, is the best place to have Howard the Duck.
Yeah, no, please don't bring him in a live action capacity anywhere ever. I
do. Going back to that though, like, it was weird to hear Thanos joke about genocide. I mean, I get that they were trying to show he was a good guy now, but like, it made me pause momentarily when they did it more than once. And I was like,
yeah, there were some things with the Thanos character being in there and being suddenly good that kind of,
it felt a little forced.
It threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
Because you still have what I assume you don't get the entire story of her, of Nebula in his backstory in this, but I can only assume that he was still following the same path that he was until Chadwick Boseman convinced him otherwise. Because
obviously she hadn't been altered to the extent that she had in, the main timeline. Like,
but he's still an abusive father.
Yeah, and also what happened to sister? Like,
does
she not exist? Is she alive? Is she dead?
Yeah, he's still an abusive father. That doesn't really, like, they kind of try and do a reconciliation of that, but then at the same time it's like, do we want a reconciliation of like a physically abusive person?
I feel like that was not a storyline we needed to explore and that needed to be included in this. I mean, again, maybe it was availability. I honestly would have preferred to have seen Gamora as opposed to Nebula, but that's just because I feel like Nebula's character has been improved as the movies have gone on, but in general I just felt like Gamora would have been a more compelling character to see.
Yeah. Oh, I actually really love Nebula's character. I think, well, personally, I think I connect with her a bit more than I do Gamora. Like, I get, like, there's just something a little bit more vulnerable about Nebula, that the wounds just seem to be a bit more exposed, like the nerves are a bit more exposed, a bit more raw. And so to me, that's a lot more interesting to watch than Gamora, who keeps everything under like a very thick skin.
Right.
And shell. Like, it's interesting, don't get me wrong, both are very interesting, but like Nebula comes at a place where she is extremely angry, and that's how she copes with her issues, is that she is anger 100% of the time. Like, that's how she can go through life, is in that mode.
Right.
And I think, and she also, because of that, she's also a lot quicker to kind of show her cards and, reveal her true feelings and in her actual, her actual backstory and how she is really, trying to cope with what's going on with her life in the world.
Right.
but yeah, I I cannot say that it was it was definitely not a seamless integration of Thanos, especially with Nebula there and trying to have some sort of reconciliation with that. It's not like Yondu and Peter Quill. Like, it is very similar, I will say, which even that made me a bit like, I'm still trying to grapple with how I feel about that reconciliation. Like, I get having a difficult relationship with your father and having him not be the hero that you really needed him or wanted him to be, and, you know, coming to terms with that. But Thanos, on the other hand,
Thanos is
literally reached into her brain and reworked her entire being. It's not something like the dad and I, like, you know, cats in the cradle and the silver spoon.
No, I mean, he literally manipulated her. I mean,
that's not what this was.
It's essentially, I mean, it is like Silence of the Lambs. Like, you know, well, you have the serial killer who lobotomizes people. Okay, well, you know, it's not to that extent, but yeah. And that's why when they still had him joking about the fact that he thought he was right to want to eviscerate half the world population, even though he still didn't say it was a bad idea. Like, he's still arguing that it was, and what did he say? Efficient? He's still arguing his case, even though he didn't do it. So it's like, well, then did he change?
Like, I can forgive that more so than I can forgive the awkwardness and the seemingly like not quite being aware of, or maybe they were aware and they're just like, we can try and write around this because we think that the Thanos, like the Thanos and T'Challa like buddy cop dynamic is really cool and we still want to do this. So we're just again, it's that whole, let's have the viewers just hopefully not ask the questions and just enjoy it, which again, I did just overall enjoy watching them. I enjoyed them. I had critiques, as we obviously have spent the past hour talking about, but as a whole, I didn't hate watching them. I enjoyed it. I would rather watch those than I would watch Batman v Superman. Oh God.
Any day. Any day.
Oh God. Every day, any day.
All day, every day. Yeah. Lock me in a closet. I'll be okay to watch this over and over. Yeah.
Yeah. There were characters in this, and
there were
Batman v Superman. There are none.
Right.
Like, and it just, I don't know. Yes, and I also very, like, I want to reiterate, I enjoyed watching. I think I would probably give it like 7.5 out of 10. I
think that's fair. Yeah.
And you know, we've got more coming.
We do.
You know, we've got more in the tube, so that'll be interesting to see where they go with it and how they're going to tie it in, or maybe not so much tie it in with Doctor Strange. Like, I know that
they're saying it's canon now. I mean, because of Loki and Doctor Strange. So
like, I get that it's canon.
Well, yeah, because they're saying following the creation of the multiverse in Loki, this show is now exploring all of those alternate timelines in the multiverse parallel to the existing MCU timeline. So it's all alternate.
Imagine them revisiting any of these storylines in an actual MCU.
Right. Yeah. Like, so it's basically Marvel's way of saying this isn't like fan fiction. This isn't just us, you know, doing something for fun. Like, we do say, like, they're saying this still fits within the zeitgeist that we have created. It's just not the main storyline we're ever going to show on the film or on the big screen.
Right, exactly.
Unless, of course, they use it as an excuse to bring Agent Carter back, in which case I'd be okay with that. Okay. Yeah. No offense. You've done nothing with Sharon Carter. So, like, let's just forget that character. Give me Peggy back.
Yeah. Oh, poor Sharon.
Sharon Carter. Poor Sharon.
Poor Sharon.
We never did a review of Winter Soldier or of Falcon and Winter Soldier here. But man, Marvel just doesn't. They have a Sharon Carter problem. They just don't know what to do with her, and then they keep making her bad, and then they make her bad again. And I'm just like, oh, poor Sharon.
They have no clue.
Then why did they bring her back? Character. Like, at this point, if you don't know what to do with the character, just don't
leave it
bring
alone.
The character back.
Just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Especially since it's such a B plot.
Oh, it was a sub. I mean, I get it. I'm like, I guess by the end of it, they're setting her up as like the new head of like a bad, weird alternate SHIELD organization. I'm not sure. But then we got Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character. So I was like, well, wait, do we have two new bad heads of a alternate bad organization? Are they the same? Yeah. It was, right. Yeah. That's a whole other conversation.
Right. In the comments, if you want us to review the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I had thoughts. It's just been out for a while now. So.
Right. I know. I for the most part, I enjoyed it. I do think it was the weakest of
it was definitely the weakest of the three.
But that's because I feel like not story-wise, but the situations that they are talking about and grappling with, they had to do a lot of work with, and whether or not they stuck the landing on the multiple points that they were trying to make.
Yeah.
It's up in the air. Some of them, they did a fine job. Others, it's like, it was a little wobbly. And then there was the few that are just like, it didn't really work for me. Like, you didn't make your argument, clear, and you didn't really stick that central narrative theme and give us the moral, the end moral that you're supposed to take away.
Right.
But it did have to do a lot more work.
It did, and it was grappling with really serious issues, very timely issues. I mean, obviously we've gotten off track a little bit here, but it was dealing with, paralleling current events is exactly what it was doing, which, that in and of itself is a heavy lift.
Especially when you don't have distance from said events. Like hindsight is 2020, and you also are able to kind of reflect and get a bigger, clearer picture and, come up with the words on how to speak about these things. But in the heat of the moment, it's very hard to distill that into a TV show or a movie when the things are actively, the topic of conversation, right? In real life.
Yeah.
So,
but all in all, I'm looking forward to the next couple episodes that are going to come out. I'm sure we'll circle back. We'll talk about them again, but like Jen said, I think 7.5, I think that's a solid, that sounds good.
So far it could go up higher. It could go lower.
I know.
Always that possibility. But hopefully not. And I look forward to seeing more myself. So please, we are trying to grow the channel. So if you would give us a like and subscribe and leave a comment down below, the comments do actually really, really help with the algorithm.
They really do.
We would be very grateful to y'all. We love coming on here every Friday and giving you guys our opinions, inviting guests on, and we'd like to continue to do that and grow the channel. So if you could give us a little bit of help, we'd love it. We upload every single Friday at noon Pacific Standard Time. And we just love doing it.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see y'all next week.
Yes. Goodbye.
Bye.